Man Scout here. I'm gonna be showing you how to replace the bushings on your power steering rack on a 1998 Ranger. This will apply to some other Ranger years, but if it's got this design with the two bushings up front that attach the rack to the cross member of the frame, this should be fairly simple. Wasn't quite sure, couldn't find some detail on whether or not you needed to remove the rack to get the bolts out, get the bushings out, or not, but you are able to get those out with a little bit of persuasion, and I don't think it's doing any damage to the rack. You're going to want to be careful because the rack is cast on these. So first, let me flip this around and I'll show you what you're going to be dealing with under there before you crawl underneath. I felt a little bit of floating in the front end. It's recently gotten alignment, and it has almost all new upper and lower control arms, shocks, everything but the knuckles pretty much on the whole front end was replaced or serviced. So this is what you're going to have, two of these assemblies as they go through the holders on the rack, and you've got these bushings on. This one's fairly old. I bet it's quite old. So this is the bottom right here, and then this will be at the top, and then your power steering cooler is going to be across the top here of these two ones, and it's just held on by this nut. This is 18 millimeter. So you'll want to take that off. Comes off fairly easily if you're not too rusted out. And then I just used a large crescent to hold this top one in place. And then this is a 15/16 inch bolt, and you access that through holes on the cross member. I'll show you that here in a minute. But once you take that off, this actually comes out pretty easily off the top. There's no hindrance there. Now getting these out is quite a trick. As you can see, this one broke off. I just used a bit of a pry bar, wedged it in there, chisel, just started lightly hammering it, and it actually separated fairly easily. And then I just worked it out, and it pops out the top like this. Comes right off. And then this piece here, as you can see, is two pieces. It's the metal middle insert there, and it's also got this plate here that keeps it tight against the cross member when that bolt is tightened up. So I'm going to show you how this is on underneath here and how you can get them out. So this one I've already got on, and as you can see, it's rotated up and away from the cross member here. This one I just got out, and you can see that guy right here. He just was in there. Now the way I did that is just a bit of persuading. You've got some room here to move, so I used a big pry bar, and when you get that in there, you can kind of angle that up and around, and there's a little bit of motion. It's just enough motion in here that you can pry that. It'll rotate up, and as you move that up, the bottom of that bushing will slide out, and you can just kind of wiggle it out. Then to put it back in, you just got to put a little bit of tension on that rack. Again, not too hard. It is cast. You don't want to break that. You have to replace the whole thing. The same thing over here. When you're on this side, you sometimes have to come back over here and move it around a bit to get this to angle in the right position. All right, so let's see if we can move this around enough. This rotates the whole thing up if you go to the other side and kind of push up on that. Just trying to get that, so I'm pushing up, up, almost, coming over to the other side. There we go. So I worked it up on the driver's side, then came over to the passenger side. You can see I don't even have pressure on there right now. That'll fit right up in there. Then you'll take your top piece here. That should just fit nice and snug right through the top. And you should be able to work that back down, and it will be ready for you to put bolts through. Of course, once you get those bolts through, it'll tighten up and suck it down into place. All right, so you can see it's pretty easy to drop those top of the bolts through, and they get them right in the hole there. Same thing over here. So all I'm going to be doing is putting the nut in through the bottom, which by the way, it goes in through these holes, one on each side. and then you'll just tighten them up from there, and that'll suck that rack back down into place. Do it slow, work it back and forth so you don't have any issues. I was going to point out, there's not a lot of flexibility on the power steering cooler, and so this will rotate around a little bit. You just want to get this bottom bracket up out of the way, because it can interfere with this bolt and the cap here that's going on over the bushing. You want to make sure you keep that out of the way. But you should have room to just move it out of the way. I don't even have this on jacks. I'm able to do this from the ground, and it's plenty of room. So I just use my air wrench till they're seated, and then I'll figure out what the torque is and get them torqued down to spec. There was one last step, and that was obviously to put the cooler back on and with the 18mm nuts. So that's it. Feel free to like this. Thanks for watching.